Hello students, this is Mrs. Miller, and the purpose of this video is to teach you all about text structure. Before you begin, you're going to need several things. The first thing that you're going to need is your spiral notebook. This is where we will be putting our notes that we take. You're also going to need a highlighter, a glue stick, a pen or a pencil, some headphones so that you could hear this presentation. You're going to need the handout that explains what standard we're working on. You're also going to need the text structure graphic organizer and this article about the Olympic Games. Please push pause on this presentation and gather these materials. I want you to think about a house and how a house is built. Building a house is kind of like the writing process. Before you build a house, there has to be some sort of plan, and that's called the blueprint, and that's what you see right here. Now, questions that an architect thinks about or the builder thinks about are, what kind of house do I want? How do I want it to be built? Do I want a one-story or a two-story home? How large do I want it to be? All of these things have to be decided before the house can actually be built. The same thing goes for writing. There has to be a plan in place before writing can take place. First, the writer has to think, what do I want to write about? How will I organize my writing? How many paragraphs will I have? And what type of words will I use? Before a builder starts building, he or she has to select a lot. He or she has to know where the new building is going to go. The same thing happens with writing. Before writing happens, the writer has to know what he or she is going to write about, and the writer also has to have a purpose for writing. Next, the builder starts to actually build the house. You can see in this picture here that this is the structure of the house. Just like when writing, the writer has a specific structure that he or she uses. Now, these are the informational text structures that we're going to be studying this school year. Once the structure of the house is set, then the builders start putting other things into the home. The same thing is true for writing. Once we know what structure we want to use, then we can start doing the writing, the revising, and the editing. When the builders are finished, there's a final project which is a beautiful home. When a writer is finished, there's a beautiful piece that is published. That's the published piece of work. Now that we understand the process that goes into writing, we need to think about our role as readers. Our current standard requires that we read a text, which is kind of like looking at the house. We need to determine the text structure. That's kind of trying to figure out what type of house it is. We have to understand how the author put the piece of writing together. That's kind of trying to understand how a house was put together. And we have to analyze how small sections help you understand the larger piece. That would be like studying small sections of a house to help you understand the overall home. You should have a piece of paper that looks like this. What I would like for you to do right now is push pause on this presentation, cut this out, and glue it into your spiral notebook. We will now spend some time studying the informational text structure of sequence and chronological. And you can see here the picture of a ladder. That's because with sequence/chronological, the events are listed in the order in which they happened. Okay? So here are some signal words to look for to see if something is written in the sequence chronological text structure. The words first, second, third, then, next, before, after, finally, and following. Those are just a few of the signal words to help you know that the text structure is sequence chronological. Now here are some tips. You can ask yourself, is this event taking place over time? Look for steps or references to time such as dates. Now, text structure is the way an author organizes information in a text. Just like the way that a builder builds a home, the text structure is the way the information is organized. Here's some more on the sequence chronological text structure. The author lists steps or events in the order in which they happen. Let's read this. First, I rolled out the dough, then added sauce, cheese, pepperonis, and vegetables. Finally, I baked it in the oven. And you can see these key words here, first, then, and finally. That lets us know that the writer is telling the events in the order in which they happened. Once again, here are the key words that help you know that something is written in sequence chronological text structure. You'll know it's a recipe for sequence if you see these words: then, next, before, after, finally, later, during, now, while, subsequently, in the end, previously, at that time, and words such as first, second, and third. You should have this piece of paper in front of you. Please follow along as I read. The Olympic Games first began as athletic festivals to honor the Greek gods. At that time, the most important festival was held in the valley of Olympia to honor Zeus, the king of the gods. It was the festival that became the Olympic Games in 776 BC. Later, these games were ended in AD 394 by the Roman emperor who ruled Greece. No Olympic Games were held for more than 1,500 years. Then the modern Olympics began in 1896. Almost 300 male athletes competed in the first modern Olympics. During the Games held in 1900, female athletes were allowed to compete. The Games have continued every 4 years since 1896, except during World War II, and they will most likely continue for many years to come. Now, your task is to cut out the paragraph and glue it in your spiral notebook. I would like for you to highlight the words that indicate the text structure. Now, I already highlighted the words here, so you're just highlighting them in your text. So you're going to highlight the word first, the words at that time, later, then, first, and during. These are the words that indicate that this is written in a sequence chronological text structure. Now, you should already have this paper in front of you. If not, go ahead and push pause and grab this paper. Your task is to take notes on the text structure graphic organizer with me as I go through the standard step by step. The first thing that I filled in is the title. The title of the text is the Olympic Games. Now, if at any point I go too fast, please simply press pause on the video and fill in your graphic organizer and then push play to continue. The next thing I'm looking at is the text structure. Now you could see right here that I've listed the different types of text structures that we're going to be studying. So the way that this article was organized, we know that it was one particular text structure. It was the sequence chronological. So let's go ahead and write that in the box. The next part of our standard requires us to understand how the author put the piece of writing together. So I'm going to fill that information in right here. I'm going to say how the author put the writing together. This is what I'm going to type. The author told the reader the history of the Olympic Games and the order in which it happened. Go ahead and add that to your graphic organizer. The last part of our standard says that we need to be able to look at the smaller sections or analyze the smaller sections in order to help us understand the larger piece. I'm looking right here, and I'm going to do that right down here. So that says text analysis. How did studying smaller pieces of the writing help you understand the overall piece of writing. This is what I'm going to type. I was able to understand the entire piece of writing by studying the key words. Since the author used the words first, at that time, later, the, and during, I was able to follow the order in which the events took place. Please go ahead and write this down in your graphic organizer.